Chapter 31. More Shadow Soldiers. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Daniel began harnessing the potent forces of light and lightning, their energies intertwining and crackling between his outstretched hands. The atmosphere around him seemed to tremble as if nature itself recognized the impending release of power. Daniel concentrated the essence of light within his palms. A vivid light brightened, its brilliance pulsating and growing. The orb of radiant energy swelled and the Apets were closing in with relentless speed. Yet, Daniel remained calm. Time was of the essence, and he had only a matter of seconds. The orb hovered before him, its radiant core seething with boundless potential, a testament to his overwhelming dominance. As the Apets charged forward, their menacing advance was met with an eruption of dazzling brilliance. The orb pulsed and expanded, a tidal wave of flashing light crashing forth in a destructive surge. The impact was cataclysmic, an onslaught of radiant energy that obliterated everything in its path. For the Apets, the world erupted into a blinding maelstrom of searing light. Fur charred, bodies disintegrated, their very essence consumed by the radiant onslaught. It was a spectacle of destruction and awe, a view of Daniel's forbidden strength. The air crackled with residual energy, the aftermath of the devastating fusion between light and lightning. Amidst the dissipating radiance, Daniel stood unscathed. In mere moments, the threat had been vanquished, the Apets were reduced to nothingness. The battlefield, once a scene of imminent danger, now bore the scars of an otherworldly clash. Congratulations, you have killed 30 Apet and have leveled up to 172 and obtained 10 stats points. With the battlefield cleared of the smoldering remains of the obliterated Apets, Daniel stood amidst the lingering echoes of his triumph. Before him, a vast horde of Apets' corpses, a sight that left him momentarily speechless. A triumphant surge of energy coursed through his veins, and Daniel raised both arms high, his stance imbued with an air of authority. As his voice resounded with an authoritative command, he invoked the skill that he had acquired. Shadow extraction. The words reverberated with a potent force, resonating with the weight of his dominion over the shadow realm. At that moment, he mirrored a sovereign issuing an irrevocable decree, a ruler who would accept nothing less than unadulterated obedience. Unlike the trials Caxer had faced in his earlier attempts, Daniel's extraction this time was instant. The shadows responded instantly, yielding to his authority without hesitation. The Apets, which had once been fearsome, now succumbed to the pull of his command, their forms becoming the very essence of shadow. As the extraction commenced, a remarkable transformation unfolded before him. They became a dark liquid, an incarnation of darkness. These shadow entities bore hazy crimson eyes that seemed to hunger for the very essence of existence. One by one, the shadow incarnations materialized, forming a chilling tableau of power under Daniel's dominion. You have added 30 Apets to your collection of shadows. The announcement echoed within his consciousness, a victory of his conquest. With a sense of satisfaction, Daniel observed as the shadowy figures converged around him, their allegiance marked by high-pitched squeaks that reverberated loudly. A nod of approval acknowledged their loyalty, and Daniel surveyed the area once more. He had glimpsed the potential of this power, and he hungered for more. His decision made, Daniel embraced the unfolding strategy. Find me monsters, not too much of your reach, and hunt as much as you can. Daniel declared his first creed, and the shadows heed the words of their master and began speeding towards their search for prey. With a commanding gesture, he set his shadow soldiers to task, unleashing their formidable might upon the task of hunting and bringing corpses. Caxer, a potent force of element, led the charge, his power magnified by the countless shadows under his command. As the shadow soldiers scattered across the landscape, the air crackled with their eerie presence. Their mission was clear, to seek out and bring the corpses of monsters, to add to Daniel's growing collection of shadows. For Caxer, it rushed deep inside the forest silently while using the best of its elemental abilities. With the knowledge and memories it had when it was alive, Caxer knew the perfect offer for its master. It was none other than a monster that goes by the name of Crimson Lion. A terrifying lion whose existence resonates with chaos itself. Now, most monsters could only potentially use their chaos synergy a little bit, and that means through the usage of their skills, traits, or abilities. However, there is the existence of monsters able to personify their chaos trait into a form of manifestation similar to how players manipulated their mana into the form of Nen. This means that existence like Crimson Lion is not to be underestimated, since their attacks alone could black out any part of a body into ashes. Of course, that could only happen if the player's resistance or stats are weaker than such existence. Still, it's not wrong to be careful with such an existence. After all, compared to the monsters in the Dark Continent, the control of chaos synergy for the Crimson Lion is nothing but a good try attempt. When Caxer and the Crimson Lion were met, both of them had their guards up, especially the Crimson Lion, who couldn't help but be baffled by the existence of Caxer. The Crimson Lion of course had a lion body, however, its body rivaled the opposite monster with blazing dark flamey skin and dark wings. But what's impressive about its appearance were its eyes. The kind of eyes where one couldn't help but be abstracted by the bizarre design of its pupil. Now that the monster's gaze was met, the lion brought its claw and slashed, creating a wave of manifestation dark claws to injure Caxer. However, Caxer's reply was a purple fireball, hoping to cancel out the attack. Nevertheless, the lion expected this and created another set of attacks where he flew up high flapping his wings, creating a powerful black tornado where Caxer ended up being in the middle. Despite its body being sturdy enough to resist the wind that began to slice part of its shadowy body, Caxer suffered as its health began to diminish bit by bit. Surprisingly, instead of its health being shaved off, it recovered each time. This is because of the support from their sovereign, Daniel. For each time a monster loses part of their health, they will be able to recover by consuming the sovereign mana as a form of equivalent exchange. Before the Crimson Lion could deal any more damage than it should, Caxer refused to let the flow of the battle be within the lion's control. Hence, Caxer decided to unleash everything it had, increasing all of his stats by 50%. Blazes of purplish flames began covering its body, and to Lion's surprise, droplets of water surrounded him without any warning. One of the droplets was shot and returned to another droplet like a pressurized laser that managed to pierce through Lion's body. Of course, being a monster with a high synergy rate with chaos, the wounds and holes left by the droplets were recovered in an instant. However, a few seconds later, its regeneration factor couldn't keep up with the pace of the never-ending piercing of droplets. To worsen the situation, Caxer closed its gap and rampaged. Caxer roared like a mad monster, but the roar had a surprise as the twin elements were shot out to overwhelm the lion. Nevertheless, the Crimson Lion had enough of it and summoned a wave of dark energy to eliminate both the droplets and the incoming roar of elements. However, instead of being alarmed, Caxer took a deep breath before pouring out everything it had. A roar that contains a mixture of combustion of fire and water, and also chaos energy. It's an ability that could only execute once, since its synergy with chaos isn't high enough for it to maximize its potential use. Chapter 32. More Shadow Soldiers Part 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After the battle, the forest felt relieved as the sound of Caxer's victorious roar faded away. O.org. The proud Crimson Lion now lay on the forest floor, burnt and defeated. Caxer stood tall, like a guardian, with its shadowy shape flickering as its energy faded, much like a dying fire. In the dark world it came from, Caxer felt a digital signal acknowledging its victory over the powerful beast. Your shadow soldier has managed to kill a monster, Crimson Lion. Daniel smiled in satisfaction as he received the notification. The digital signal of victory blended with the sounds of the forest, creating a short-lived symphony of success. With excitement, Daniel looked ahead, thinking about the hours of hunting ahead, during which his shadows would search for more prey to add to their growing group. Despite Caxer's victory, it still felt a strong desire to fulfill its duty and hunger for more. Caxer blended perfectly with the shifting shadows and moved forward with determination. It was eager to respond to the promise of more offerings. In another part of the forest, a wild group of Apets caused chaos with their noisy cries and heavy steps. These creatures were known for their fierce hunting skills and represented the untamed ferocity of shadows. Amid the chaos, a subtle change began to happen. The Apets, who used to be a strong group, now had the influence of shadows on them. Their existence had changed, making them more like the shadow world, giving them new powers that didn't fit with the natural world. They were quick and ruthless, and they easily killed the regular Apets. As the Apets were on a mission to find prey for their master, and they had a cunning plan in mind. They knew just the right creatures that could distract their master. So, they went to a place filled with many different kinds of insects. Among these insects, they were looking for a specific one called Blitz. These bugs had a unique trick up their sleeves. They harnessed a chaotic power called corruption. While most monsters utilized their chaotic abilities to enhance their skills or attributes, these insect critters had a knack for causing corruption. This nasty condition was worse than just a simple poison. It gnawed at the very core of a victim's being, and the only cure lay in the hands of holy attribute healers or similar rare abilities. Dealing with these insect monsters posed a daunting challenge unless you had a healer with holy attributes nearby. For the unprepared, an encounter with these bugs could be a one-way ticket to oblivion. To understand the gravity of the corruption effect, imagine it as a vicious disease that laughs at resistance. Even the hardest of individuals might find themselves defenseless, as chaos devours everything in its path. Defying this abnormality required one of three methods. First, a healer with holy attributes could counteract the corruption. Second, severing the corrupted body part might halt its progress. Lastly, having robust stats provided some defense, like a shield against a relentless onslaught. Corruption was akin to a relentless fire, consuming cells like fuel to spark its unsettling effects. Its impact could endure, fueled by the body's cells that it devoured. However, corruption came in various flavors. In this case, the Blitz insects specialized in corrupting minds. They released a misty haze that, when inhaled, worked its dark magic within seconds. Unlike some of their kin, the Blitz didn't need direct contact to spread their sinister influence. Of course, mightier insect monsters existed, but the Apets adhered to their master's directive, to gather monsters that were within their limits. Hence, their pursuit continued. Upon finding their prey, the Apets stopped in their tracks as they sensed close to 50 Blitz, and they believed they were surrounded. Suddenly, a heavy mist colored green began spreading around the Apets as the Blitz hiding were waiting to see their demise. However, instead of their expectations, the Apets began jumping around and hunting down the Blitz that was flying above them. The Blitz has a similar appearance to a bee, but bigger and similar to the size of a domestic cat. But what's mesmerizing about them is the green and white stripes of their body, which is weird yet somehow appealing to one's eye. Although Blitz is a group not to be messed with, they were honestly easy to hunt, at least for some veterans. For most insect monsters, their terrifying trait only lies in their corruption and nothing else. In other words, their defense and raw attacks are 5 times weaker than the usefulness of their corruption. Maybe corruption is a way to make up for their lack of survival. Nevertheless, one thing that made them troublesome was their senses. Their keen senses allowed them to witness every action by half, and that's why they could easily evade attacks. As soon as the Apets noticed their hidden spots, they began jumping everywhere, hoping to catch them. But the Blitz was avoided. However, relying on their fellow shadows, some of the Apets executed their ability and teleported to the exact place as the previous Apet, and by bending their legs over their previous fellow they managed to jump higher and faster thanks to the additional force. By doing this, even some of the Blitz wouldn't expect this to happen since everything happened too fast, and in the end, all of the 50 Blitz were hunted down with their bodies oozing with colorless blood. It was a bit gruesome as the Apets used their raw teeth to bite them, sending them to their early deaths before continuing for more hunts. Chapter 33. Prisms. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Your shadow soldiers have successfully killed 50 Blitz, and you have leveled up to 173 and have obtained 10 stats points. The news of 50 Blitz insects meeting their demise at the hands of his shadow soldiers brought a triumphant grin to Daniel's face. His level had ascended to an impressive 173, and with this came the acquisition of 10 valuable stat points. Such consistent success filled him with a sense of elation he couldn't have foreseen. It's still far, but I'm getting closer towards the designated future that I want. The idea that he would one day achieve his desired future was the reason that he was willing to do anything. But, he wasn't content to merely watch from the sidelines. Let's hunt for more, he smirked. While his shadow minions carried out their relentless hunt, Daniel harnessed his Nen ability to detect lurking monsters within his vicinity. The forest became his arena, a realm of both predator and prey. Time seemed to lose its grip on him as he immersed himself in the thrill of the hunt. Hours slipped away unnoticed, and his focus honed on tracking and eliminating his quarry. In modern Fantasia, the only way to obtain unique abilities, classes, equipment or Easter eggs is through only two methods. Firstly, it's located randomly in a place that no one would have expected, like where Daniel had discovered his class in the tower. Secondly is through a quest where the rewards are based upon rank, and the higher it is the richer the rewards will be. However, there is an unknown method only known to Daniel. No, it was only known a year later after players were able to explore the vast land of the human continent, allowing them to discover unknown treasures. Nevertheless, whether this method falls under the rule of luck or condition nobody will ever know, since it's a combination of two. At the same time, it's only one in hundreds or even thousands where such luck could occur. At the same time, hunting a single monster is enough to trigger this effect, and the effect of prism drops. A monster that is unchained by a dungeon or tower drops currency and items upon killing. And the previous which had been killed, their drops were immediately transferred into Daniel's inventory. But in the first place, what is the meaning behind the word prism? Well, Prism is said to have random abilities or items that could be given either from Easter eggs or an original impression. They are like hopes for players who couldn't earn any powerful abilities or items from rewards. However, to attain a Prism is like sacrificing 2 to 5 years of your luck, since it's unlikely to drop. Moreover, a single Prism could auction up for close to 100 million, and the rank of a Prism falls under the grade of Silver, Gold and Rainbow. A Rainbow Prism is guaranteed to give a rank S ability or items. Having said that, the records of Rainbow Prisms obtained in the future are not less than 100. 100 isn't the limit, but more of a fortune encounter where only 100 out of millions of players were chosen. And yet, as Daniel and his puppet shadows kept on hunting down monsters, a shiny silvery or golden prism began dropping. This is weird that I knew for a fact that Prism had a close to non-existent chance of dropping. However, it's without a doubt that luck plays a huge part in the role. Bewildered by the number of prisms he started to gain, he wondered how on earth he managed to get so lucky. Is it due to my current luck stats, which is almost close to 9,000? He came up with a hypothesis where perhaps multiplying the percentage of a chance of getting a prism to his stats may guarantee at least a silver or gold. But of course, he shrugged this theory since it doesn't make sense at all, and if it's true, then why weren't the rest of the players in the future able to harvest such a number of the prisms? Were there another unknown variable that we didn't consider? He wondered. Is it something like a condition clearance, or maybe a privilege given by the class, or is this due to my luck? To ponder something that doesn't hold any meaning, Daniel tried coming up with answers that fit his hypothesis, and at long last, he was finally able to come up with a reasonable reason. This is how he forgot that Danger Zone holds on to a more meaningful meaning rather than titles that were named by some founders. To explain a complete explanation about the Danger Zone would require some time. But never mind that. Now, as mentioned before, Danger Zone is home to an uncountable population of monsters, and their combination of all Danger Zone prowess is enough to destroy at least half of the continent if left untouched. Yet, just like how the human continent is managed by different perpetual rulers of different districts, there is one danger zone for each different district except the main district where the king of human hero lives. Having said that, to simplify why Daniel has a high rate of prisms at the moment is simply because of the atmosphere and the monsters. Imagine the danger zone as a whole huge massive dungeon instead of being a free land. Now that the image is there, part of the reason has been solved since all of the quality and quantity of the drop are affected by the quality of the atmosphere energy. The danger zone is one of the best places to hunt for materials or drops. Yet many in the future were not brave due to the risk involved. Why would they hunt in the danger zone rather than a dungeon or the tower that provided a much safer and guaranteed reward? To add on, part of the work is done by Daniel's luck since it's unheard of for a level 173 player to possess luck close to 9,000. In other words, the quality or quantity of drops is affected by the two factors. Either the atmosphere energy or simply the rarity of them should be included. In the end, Daniel believed none of it mattered since as long as the result would benefit him and not harm him, he wouldn't mind taking advantage of it and using it to the fullest. After all, there were close to 10 mixtures of silver and gold prisms which could grant him an unknown outcome. Chapter 34. More Shadow Soldiers. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Time had flown by, and it had been a mere 5 hours since Daniel had plunged into the treacherous expanse of the danger zone. Yet, the fruits of his labor were nothing short of remarkable. The results of vanquished monsters, whether felled by the hands of his Nen-infused might or the relentless onslaught of his obedient shadows, were gathered and incorporated into his growing legion of darkness. The sheer magnitude of his shadow army was awe-inspiring, enough to send shivers down the spine of even the most battle-hardened warriors. In achieving his day's objective, Daniel had amassed an assembly of hundreds of kneeling shadows. Each one exuded an air of unwavering loyalty and reverence that surpassed even the bonds forged in the heat of the fiercest battles. The enigmatic thoughts swirling within the minds of these shadowy servants remained mysterious, hidden behind their collective commitment to their master. Whatever those thoughts might be, one truth was evident: they stood ready to relinquish everything, to lay down their very essence if it meant fulfilling their master's will. As Daniel gazed upon this sight, his eyes, a mirror of his mother's, held a potent mix of anticipation and pride. The sight of such an eclectic congregation of monsters, each one bowing in dutiful obedience, stirred a deep sense of fulfillment within him. It was an accomplishment that defied the normals. It was an achievement to be envied by those who dared to dream. Amidst this spectacle, he couldn't help but marvel at the class. With every shadow at his command, every creature kneeling in allegiance, Daniel found himself more convinced that he would get his hands on every overpowered ability as he could. The total number of shadows he had extracted to 500 and the number of species he had was a dozen. Caxer's total number hunted was 10, and each of them had different elementals in the different heads. Astonishingly, one of the Caxers was 3-headed, gaining 3 different elements. It was a mutated monster, a different kind where upon reaching higher ranks of levels, it'll be powerful enough to rival more than dozens of players at the same level. The second monster that was hunted down was no doubt the Apet, and their numbers now were totaled around 150, which meant they were second in place for being the one with the most number of shadows. After all, the shadows of monsters that make up the most number are without a doubt the Blitz, which now had an exact number of 200. To add on, while the Blitz hunted down their kind, they managed to miraculously bring down their mother, to be precise, their queen who governs most of the Blitz in the area nearby. For every species of insect or monster, there would be a similar existence to a queen that would hatch eggs, and increase their population. Hence, a queen for every species of insect monster is a foe not to be underestimated. They are a monster that is leagues above a boss or even a mutated monster, since the Blitz Queen herself has passive skills which allows her to command her children with absolute loyalty. Because of her uniqueness, she was hunted down, and with that, the Queen now has joined the ranks of the Shadow, and she became a sub-leader for the Blitz species, as she originally had the natural ability to telepathically command them. At first, Daniel became worried about whether the queen would act on her own. But he was reminded by his skill itself that the shadows showed nothing but a ready-to-die kind of attitude for him. Moreover, it was kind of surprising to hear that Queen Blitz could communicate with human words. But on the other hand, it wasn't too much of a shock. After all, monsters do possess intelligence, or at least, the mind to communicate with. But it will depend on the rankings and levels of monsters, and that doesn't mean all monsters can communicate. It only applies to special existence like the Blitz Queen, or perhaps, it may have something to do with either her life expectancy or simply her skills. Right after the Blitz Queen was hunted and turned into a shadow, the Blitz Shadow Soldiers immediately headed out for different species of monsters after separating their tracks from the Apets, who had a fair share of numbers of shadows. Now that the Blitz had their queen, their way of strategically hunting down monsters became efficient as they utilized their numbers in a great way. With knowledge and memories that surpassed the horizon of all of the shadows, the queen knew the perfect monsters to hunt. Kaxar is a rare monster that provides good defense and magical attacks of elements, which may be a weakness for some monsters or even players. To put it in the words of the game, it's a monster with nice packs for starters. On the other hand, the Apets were only good for their teleportation ability, which is not useful for their master, at least according to the queen. Moreover, the queen believed that her kind was not going to provide much support other than the abnormalities skills they possessed. Right now, what her liege lacks is a tanky monster that's able to protect their monster from any harm or attacks. It's not that she doesn't believe in her master powers, however, she wouldn't allow even the tiniest speck of dust to make contact with his flawless skin. The monster she chose to hunt is none other than a species called Hinds. Hinds is a monster similar to the Minotaur, one of the races belonging to the continent of the demi-human. However, Hinds doesn't have any relations at all with the Minotaur. But the similarity they had was their impenetrable and resistant skin, and the average for each of them is above 200. The reason why Hinds is different from the Minotaur is the fact that they're a monster with wings on their back. It was not the kind of wings where you'll be memorized by it. It's a wing that contains the entire synergy of chaos, and this gives them a trait of flight. Moreover, Hinds' bodies are said to be at least 5 to 7 stories high depending on each monster. With such a gigantic body and unbelievable traits, they were a bunch of foes where Blitz shouldn't even be possible to defeat, at least now with durability or strength. The only weakness Hinds has is their lack of intelligence, and by taking advantage of it, the queen was able to come up with a tactful strategy to bring down these titans. And at long last, they were able to bring at least 40 of them, earning themselves quite a praise from their master. Chapter 35. What a sight! You are listening at NovelFull.audio. With the might of her shadow offspring and the recent takedown of Hinds, the queen's cerebral gears were set in motion. Her intellect whirred like an intricate clockwork, seeking the most remarkable offerings to lay at her master's feet. After her intense battle with Hinds and the destruction caused by Kaxar, Apets, and her own powerful children, the queen spent time thinking about her strategy. Even though her forces were strong, she knew that her master's spectral army needed to keep getting better. While Daniel was focused on adding more creatures to his spectral collection, the queen had bigger plans in mind. She saw herself as someone who could provide a variety of creatures to make her master's spectral army even stronger, not just more creatures. With a strong sense of purpose, she started looking for new creatures, this time focusing on those with spirit abilities. These creatures were like ghosts, made of a cloudy substance mixed with a bright bluish-white liquid. These creatures had the potential to add something special to the growing spectral group. The queen's goal was evident. To create a collection that wasn't just big but also had a mix of talents. She was dedicated not just to serving her master but also to giving him a collection of skills that would work well together in his spectral army. One of them was called Vengers, monsters capable of utilizing the abilities of a spirit. The abilities or skills related to spirit allow one to possess another spirit without any effort unless they have high resistance. But possessing a spirit isn't their main forte. Just like the insect's monster, Vengers possess a similar ability to corruption. In other words, they do have the means to deteriorate a person's soul into a mindless psychopath killer. The reason why Vengers are feared by players is due to how there's only one method of resisting against their possessions, and it's through the abilities of classes like Druid, Soul Master or Priest. Still, there's one more factor that makes them impossible to avoid, as they have the trait of being able to pass through any walls or floors. Even Daniel couldn't help but be reminded how helpless he was and was almost possessed if it weren't the help from a certain maiden. This is why the Queen believed the Vengers were important offerings, as they were incredibly useful monsters which have a huge potential of being put to use. Having said that, the only redemption of fairness is the fact that Vengers could only be born through the accumulation of vengeful spirits from monsters. Hence, they were low in numbers, especially in the danger zone where there weren't any festivals or hunts, and it greatly reduced their numbers. Well, thanks to this, the Queen and her kind were able to bring down the Vengers with the help of Heinz after being turned into shadows. If it weren't thanks to the advantage of shadows being immune to any soul attacks, they would have lost the fight against the Vengers. Nonetheless, the outcome was a collection of 10 Vengers into the army. Now that the shadow is at least balanced according to her thoughts, the shadows were able to hunt more monsters with ease, adding up to 500. After the Vengers were monsters called Gia, a kind of monster that rivaled the height and durability of Heinz. To simplify their characteristics, they would be akin to an earth golem. Their main trait is being able to restore part of their destroyed body from absorbing any earthly materials. Moreover, their main skills were Hails of Chaos, which summons rocks imbued with chaos from the sky, destroying any armies within seconds if there weren't any resistance. Right afterwards were monsters called Archon. A monster with similar characteristics to a Pegasus, except it has black fur with 2 pairs of beautiful night wings. Archon, though it's lower than the Caxer in terms of combat power and elements, there's one element that stands out from the rest, which is the light element. Now, monsters of chaos don't forbid them from being able to use any light element abilities. Only the demons are hostile towards any light bearer, since it's their weakness. Moreover, a demon body can't contain 2 contrasting forces, as it would tear them apart. Demons were the epitome of darkness and curse, which doesn't allow them to be born with any light element or holy abilities. On the other hand, monsters have this privilege since chaos consumes everything. Having said that, for a monster to possess a light element is incredible to be found, yet, Archon is one of the many species that were said to possess them. However, what makes Archon special itself is how its light element has been influenced by chaos synergy, creating a rather troublesome element called pseudo-chaotic light element. While they do have support abilities, whether it's healing or buff, they do have similar abilities to curse, debuff and abnormalities. To add on, they possess lots of skills that fall under chaos and light itself, which is considered rare. For monsters, it's unheard of to be able to have chaos and light abilities at the same time. They were similar to Caxer, whose elements have been influenced by chaos synergy. The next species of monsters that were hunted were named as follows: Vaz, Urto, Troll, Rio, and Caxer, where each of their abilities and skills is not lesser or less potential than the monsters that became shadows earlier on. And now, all of the monsters were kneeling under the presence of their master, Daniel Bell. The sight of seeing dozens of shadow soldiers bowing beneath adds a certain charm to it. Proud of his gathering of shadow soldiers, a smile formed on his face as he gazed towards the loyal shadow soldiers. "There will be more, and I won't stop with just this," he exclaimed. Chapter 36. Meeting her again. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. With nothing else to do for the day, Daniel sent his shadows to the Shadow Realm. Afterwards, he exited from the danger zone before finding a nearby teleportation core in one of the nearby cities. As a result, he teleported into the main district. The main district bathed in the soft glow of a fading sunset. This was the very place where he had first ventured into this astonishing alternate reality. It wasn't just a virtual world, but a reality that sprawls, an expanse of imagination made tangible. He ambled through the streets, his steps guided by nostalgia and a longing for memories that he had perhaps willingly kept at bay. It was as if he was revisiting moments he had once experienced, a symphony of déjà vu that played on the strings of his heart. Lost in thought, he found himself wandering aimlessly, a silent spectator in this wondrous metropolis. Just as he was walking, a voice, soft yet resonant, feminine yet strangely familiar, danced through the air. "Hey, you wait." The voice sounded in a hurry with a tint of desperation. But despite that, it still holds the sweet charm. It was a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of his memories, beckoning him like a siren's call. His heart raced as he turned, his gaze scanning the vibrant thoroughfare. And there she stood, a figure bathed in the ethereal glow of neon lights and holographic displays. Time seemed to slow as their eyes met, an unspoken connection weaving between them. "I know you must be in a hurry," her gentle voice seemed to tug his heartstrings. As she spoke, her fingers danced nervously, a display of her uncertainty. "But would you mind partying with me?" Her words hung in the air, delicate as the petals of a blooming flower, fragile yet full of hope. The city's vibrant hum seemed to soften, creating a bubble of intimacy around them. Her gaze remained fixed on the figure she had called out to, and her heart skipped a beat as he paused in his tracks and turned to face her. It was as though the universe itself had held its breath, waiting for this pivotal moment to unfold. "Player Cecilia has invited you up for a party, do you accept?" A fleeting "H.H." escaped his lips, revealing a swirl of emotions beneath the surface. He, a traveler from the future, recognized her, and the revelation had taken him by surprise. He had not expected to encounter her at this particular juncture. To her, his demeanor might have appeared steady, his posture unwavering, and his expression tinged with curiosity. Yet, behind those composed fa.aids, a whirlwind of internal turmoil raged. In a future where hope seemed lost, Daniel had walked a path filled with a strong desire for revenge. When his mother died suddenly, it created a burning anger inside him. He was determined to destroy every monster out there because of it. "I will eradicate every monster that ever lived," he had declared, his voice resonating with the fervor of an oath etched in pain. In a world full of sadness and despair, there was a person who was like a source of hope. Her kindness warmed his heart even though he had sworn to stay strong. As they spent time together, their connection grew into more than just friendship. They cared deeply for each other. But it seemed like the universe enjoyed being cruel to him. Every part of his life was filled with tragedy. Every season brought loss and sadness, leaving him with wounds that never healed. Haunted by the memories of those he loved and lost, Daniel started a new mission. He wanted to change destiny itself, to save the people he cared about. And then, unexpectedly, he saw someone he didn't think he'd meet here and now. It brought a rush of emotions, each feeling pulling at his heart. There she stood, a beacon of light in the gloom, the maiden priest of the future. She was a person who showed a lot of care and never gave up. She had been like a steady support for him through all the difficult times in life. Her presence had been like a rope to hold on to when everything was going wrong, giving him comfort when he was hurt. When he looked into her eyes, he saw all the times they had been together. The fights they had fought side by side, the times they laughed and were vulnerable, and all the things they never said but knew in their hearts. He got emotional as he realized how important this reunion was. It reminded him of all they had been through and everything that was still ahead. Tears welled up in his eyes as he looked at her. He felt a rush of emotions, like a storm inside him. It was a mix of sadness from losing her, a longing for things to be different, and a strong love that he couldn't control. His voice shook when he thought her name, carrying all the feelings he couldn't say out loud. "Cecilia," he whispered quietly, almost like a fragile sound in a world full of chaos. She wasn't just a friend, she was one of the holy knights of the apocalypse, a brave guardian protecting Earth from its impending doom. Seeing her in front of him made his thoughts spin like leaves caught in a strong wind. He chuckled to himself, amazed at how unpredictable fate could be. He thought about how destiny could be both complicated and surprising. Life's ups and downs had brought them together at this moment, even though he had planned to meet her a year later. He wanted to smile to show how relieved he was, but he held it back because he didn't want to reveal all his emotions. Knowing she was here, standing right in front of him, was a big difference from the memories he held from the future. As he looked at her, he was amazed by her affection for him. It was something he had wondered about since they first met. She, the maiden priest, had fallen in love with him, which surprised and humbled him. Despite feeling like he wasn't good enough, she chose him, and that made him feel both happy and regretful. He thought about the regrets he had, all the times he didn't say or do what he wished he had. Her death in the future had been hard to accept, a reminder of how fragile life is. Regret gnawed at him because he hadn't returned her love and missed opportunities to be with her. But now, he had a second chance. She was there, alive, and he could finally say the things he had kept inside. The girl he wanted to apologize to and spend time with was right in front of him. In this critical moment, he had a choice to make. Embrace the present, change his fate, and finally express his feelings. Looking at her reminded him of her beauty. She had long, flowing blonde hair that shone in the light. Her outfit was white with gold details, elegant and practical. Her eyes were captivating, and her lips were inviting. Her figure was perfect, and she carried herself confidently. She held a long, elegant wand, a symbol of her power. She had already achieved a lot in her quests. Finishing part of the tutorial just 2 days after the reality simulation began was a significant accomplishment. I've got to see you again. He was immersed in seeing. But did I in the end that I'm the only one who has memories of her while she has none of me? We're strangers to each other, he sighed in his mind, wondering whether he could once again relive their relationship, and he was afraid of ruining every single happiness he had with her. In the first place, why did she approach me? Wait, don't tell me. He had glanced at the surroundings and realized that he wandered off without knowing where he was heading, since right beside him was a building belonging to one of the guilds of the human continent. The guild which is called Dawnlight is the guild where the maiden priest had taken her tutorial lessons and guide. Meaning to say, Daniel has either fortunately or unfortunately happened to be at this place and at a time when the maiden priest encountered them. That a no. Watching him in silence, the girl thought he was ignoring her. Sigh, it seems I'll need to try my luck tomorrow again to finish part of the tutorial quest. I thought I could breeze through the tutorial, but it seems there are times where I'll need others' help, the girl thought dejectedly. Chapter 37. Partying Up. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Normally, to reach the tutorial quest of Partying Up, it would require at least 3 months, and yet, the girl managed to achieve it within 2 days. How she managed to accomplish it within such a short amount of time no one knows except herself. But the fact that she managed to unlock a class at the same time requesting a party is impressive, since it proves how much potential she has. And it's no wonder why she became a powerful existence that will one day be one of the holy knights of Apocalypse. Nonetheless, Daniel's emotions were a little bit wild as he became conflicted between sadness and happiness. Partying up. Daniel was aware that Cecilia, the future maiden priestess, has an ability or a skill that allows her to gaze at or inspect anything. But because of the huge level difference, she probably won't be able to utilize it, and even if he pretended not to know, the level difference would have been obvious. It's kind of impressive that you are able to obtain the Partying Up quest within a short amount of time, he complimented and met Cecilia here. He wished to rebuild his relationship with her what it used to be. But there's a doubt in him that she wouldn't love him as before. Thank you, she replied with a wide innocent smile, and curiously, she decided to activate her skill, and she became horrified by the result. Restriction due to low level. Even though she has used this ability towards other players hundreds of times, for some reason, she couldn't pierce through the man's status. And that leaves her the only possible conclusion. It's possible of his level is higher than mine, since it's part of the skill weakness. But the question is how? She pondered, and at the same time, she was horrified. But only then did she remember his words earlier. So he has gone further than me in the tutorial. But that's impossible. She wanted to deny, but it was the only plausible conclusion she could have. However, this wasn't her priority. She needs to party in order to fulfill the request of partying up and hunting monsters in a dungeon nearby. I don't mind partying up, but if I agree to be part of your party, what do I earn in return? I'm sure I have no reason in partying up with you. Although Daniel wanted to help her, he didn't want his emotions to get over him for being familiar. He chose to act like a complete stranger but not the evil one. That would be the loot from the dungeon. She exclaimed with her eyes closed as though she was desperate. To the girl, all she wanted was to make acquaintance with the man and fulfilling her request with his aid, which kills two birds with one stone. After all, being able to resist her skill could only mean she has struck gold, since the skill which allowed her to see through a player's stat is ranked S, the highest rank that could ever be given to skills. All right, that I can agree with that. He pretended that he cares about the loot when he actually doesn't. It seems fun to tease her in this way since she used to tease me a lot. He almost chuckled right in front of her. You really agree to party up with me? Surprised by his answer, she thought it would be hard to earn his agreement. After all, even though it was only day 2, the players gradually showed their true colors. The thought and feeling of power allowed their minds to be drunk by it, and soon enough, they became arrogant. It's still like a bud of a flower, however, surely in the future, their arrogance would probably be over the clouds. Why? You don't want me to? He teased. No. I'll appreciate it very much if we party up together. She exclaimed as though she wouldn't let go of this chance. Both of the sender and receiver has agreed in becoming a party. Now that we have become a party, shouldn't we head for the dungeon? Daniel asked. However, on the contrary, she has different thoughts. Shouldn't we make some preparations for the dungeon? Although, it's my first time, the tutorial has taught me about how dungeons can be dangerous if there aren't enough preparations. The girl titled her head. Right, you're absolutely right. The basis for every single hunt of monsters is always and will be preparation. That's the key to a successful hunt, he added while forgetting that his stats are different from the average. He forgot to reconsider that the fact players will still require at least some form of preparation since their skills are not like his. Well, what are we waiting for? Let's go. Taking the initiative to lead the hunt, he urged the girl to move forward to the nearby dungeon, and she followed without any question. He's quite a strange man, but at the same time, he doesn't seem to be bad. In fact, why do I feel like I've seen him somewhere? Well, it's probably my imagination, the girl thought. A few minutes later, as they kept walking towards their destination, Daniel opened up a friendly conversation, trying to take the first step in reminiscing their forgotten relationship. Does he hope to return to what once used to be a special relationship? Of course. He wished to return back everything she did for him, and this time, he wouldn't want to regret, at least not again. Come to think of it, I don't even know your name yet, he asked. It's Cecilia, and how about yours? She replied with expectations in her eyes. If somehow this encounter may be their first and last, she'd at least wish to know his name. The name's Daniel, he answered. Seconds after that, there was only awkward silence with neither of them not knowing how to open up a conversation. Still, in the end, Daniel chose to question Cecilia of her perspectives. Say Cecilia, what do you think about everything? Everything. Yeah, everything, the modern fantasy and the divine being who called itself Grisaia. Don't you think it seems skeptical? Wouldn't you suspect that there is at least something going on? He gazed over Cecilia with eyes that seems to possess countless experiences, and seeing those eyes, she became captivated by how beautiful they were. It's like she's falling into a fit where it sucks the existence out of her. Chapter 38. Cecilia First Hunt. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Hearing Daniel's words, Cecilia came to a halt, her steps arrested by a cascade of emotions that seemed to swirl around her. The wind, a fleeting messenger of nature, played with her hair and carried a sense of coolness through the air. The atmosphere itself seemed to mirror the complexities that churned within her, and her gaze drifted upward to the expanse of the sky. Her eyes, like windows into her thoughts, held a mixture of contemplation and uncertainty. It was as if the weight of their conversation had pulled her into a world of introspection, where the questions that had long lingered found a voice. Skeptical, huh? Her voice was a soft murmur as if she was speaking to the whispers of the wind itself. I guess if you put it that way, then, there's no doubt there's a conspiracy going on about its existence. The words hung in the air, a contemplative admission that carried the weight of hidden truths. Her mind seemed to navigate a labyrinth of possibilities, each pathway leading to deeper layers of understanding. And I wouldn't lie to admit that knowing there's an existence somewhere out there capable of wiping us humans in an instant makes me fear my life. Her voice carried a touch of vulnerability, a raw honesty that laid bare her innermost fears. The enormity of the threats they faced was a shadow that loomed over their lives, casting doubt upon the foundations of their reality. To add on, it's even terrifying that there's more of them and they have been watching us since the first evolution. Her words held a gravity that seemed to pull the very air around them. The notion of beings observing their existence from the shadows, across the tapestry of evolution, was a revelation that sent shivers down the spine. But don't you think this evolution or modern fantasia, whatever it is, an opportunity for some of us? Her gaze shifted, her eyes now locked onto Daniel's, a gaze that seemed to seek affirmation or perhaps validation. At that moment, the intensity of her emotions was palpable, a connection forged through shared uncertainties and hopes. Lowering her head from staring toward the sky, her gaze remained fixed on him, and within her eyes, a storm of thoughts raged. It was as if the depth of their conversation had drawn back a curtain, revealing a vulnerability that she had long kept hidden. As Cecilia's gaze locked onto his, Daniel's perceptive nature didn't allow him to overlook the intensity of the emotions that swirled within her eyes. The familiarity of those emotions resonated within him, echoing the pain and the burning desire for change that he had once felt so acutely. It was an emotion that had driven him to alter the course of history, to rewrite the future that had been painted with sorrow and loss. And now, seeing that same fire in her eyes, he couldn't help but feel like they had one thing in common. The smile that graced her lips, though seemingly forced, only deepened his suspicions. It was a facade that he had come to recognize well, a mask worn to conceal the turmoil within. She must have something going on with her life outside of this world, his thoughts mused, the realization dawning upon him like a hidden truth suddenly brought to light. The revelation was a stark reminder of the gaps in his knowledge, the fragments of her existence that remained shrouded in mystery. In the midst of their shared journey, he had inadvertently overlooked the depths of her past, the chapters of her life before their paths converged. His voice cut through the air, carrying the weight of his contemplations. I guess you're right about it. What's currently happening around the world is a chance for those who were less fortunate, but this adds oil to the flame instead of solving it. The words were a reflection of his thoughts, an acknowledgement of the complexities of change and its unintended consequences. Her silence in response, a canvas upon which her unspoken thoughts played out, only fueled his curiosity further. It's without a doubt, with change there's bound to be cause and effect, whether it will be good or bad. Cecilia's voice carried a note of melancholy, a timbre that hinted at the weight of her own experiences. Her words resonated with a sense of sadness, a poignant understanding of the intricacies of their reality. At that moment, as they continued on their path, it became clear that their journey was more than just a physical one, it was a journey of introspection, of unearthing the layers of their souls. What matters the most is that we carry on our life with no regrets. Her voice held a fragility, a vulnerability that tugged at his heart. The sentiment, though spoken softly, reverberated with profound truth. The past and the future converged in their footsteps, and the choices they made now would ripple through time, shaping the narrative that had yet to be written. As the silence enveloped them, a mutual understanding settled between them, an unspoken agreement to respect the boundaries of each other's stories. Daniel chose to hold his inquiries at bay, knowing that some tales were meant to unfold in their own time, and some wounds were meant to be tended delicately. The silence that had enveloped them was gently shattered by Daniel's voice, the words carrying a note of practicality amidst the weight of their introspective thoughts. "Shouldn't we go to the dungeon that you need to?" he inquired, his words a reminder of their original purpose, a beacon guiding them back to the task at hand. Cecilia's smile, like a glimmer of sunlight breaking through the clouds, danced across her lips. "That's right," she replied, the affirmation laced with a sense of determination. It was a simple exchange, a verbal agreement that marked the turning point from their shared contemplations to the imminent challenge that awaited them. Half an hour later, their journey led them to the entrance of a dungeon, a threshold that marked the boundary between the known and the unknown. Along the way, their conversation had blossomed, the words exchanged forming the threads of understanding that wove their connection tighter. They had ventured beyond the surface, sharing fragments of their stories and unveiling the layers that composed their identities. Daniel glanced at Cecilia, a gentle curiosity in his eyes. "You know, since we're in a party and we pretty much are strangers, why don't we share about lives?" He wanted to use this chance to develop a friendly relationship with her, and Cecilia's expression lifted as she was kind of eager to share her life with the person in front of her. A smile graced her lips as she nodded in agreement. "I don't mind," she cheerfully replied, her voice carrying a sense of eagerness. It was a chance to forge a deeper connection, to bridge the gap between the past and the present. As they continued conversing, they had formed a bond, and for Daniel, it was a starting point for him, a chance for him to renew his mistakes, and at some point, his laughter echoed as it dissipates whatever regret he had with Cecilia. Meanwhile, as Cecilia talked with Daniel, she discovered that he was a likable man. To her, he can be cheery and serious at times. But the strangest thing she found about him was that he was too mature and wise for his age, perhaps a little bit too wise. But she didn't mind it, and she felt like she could open up to him, but she hesitated. As Cecilia approached the gate of the dungeon, her fingers brushed against the cold, metallic surface. Her actions were a testament to her familiarity with the mechanisms, a knowledge gained from the tutorial that had guided them earlier. "Do you wish for your party to enter the dungeon of Phoenix?" The question hung in the air, a pivotal moment that beckoned them to step into the abyss. With a resolute affirmation, she answered with a decisive yes, a declaration that resonated within the metal gate. The gate, in turn, swung open, and a silent invitation extended to its challengers. As they crossed the threshold, their surroundings shifted, and they found themselves within the depths of the dungeon, a realm that defied Cecilia's preconceived notions. "Is this how a dungeon appears to be?" she mused, her voice carrying a mixture of surprise and intrigue. Her gaze swept across the dimly lit expanse, taking in the environment that stretched before her. Daniel's response was practical, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "Well, dungeons aren't exactly a place where you could leisurely enjoy walking around. It's a cave where monsters live," he explained, his words offering a glimpse into the reality that lay ahead. The murky ambience, the air thick with an undercurrent of tension, mirrored the nature of the challenges that awaited them. As they delved deeper into the dungeon, their steps echoing in the dimness, the connection they had forged continued to flourish. The layers of camaraderie they had uncovered during their journey remained intact, forming a bond that would serve as a pillar of support amidst the trials that awaited them. As they walked along the path, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation, their footsteps echoing in the cavernous silence. But their serene progress was abruptly shattered by Cecilia's sudden reaction. Her startled gasp cut through the air, her body jolting in surprise. Wide-eyed and speechless, she was momentarily rendered speechless by what lay before them. Grr! A low growl resonated, emanating from the opposite end of their path. The source of the sound became clear as their gazes landed on the creatures that awaited them. Wolves-like monsters, with 3 pairs of crimson eyes and menacing fangs, rested in repose, their snoring punctuating the eerie quiet of the dungeon. Cecilia's horror was palpable, her eyes bulging as her mouth fell open in disbelief. Her initial reaction was one of sheer terror, her body instinctively recoiling from the gruesome sight before her. Not to your liking. Daniel's chuckle cut through the tension, his voice laced with amusement. Unfazed by the monster's presence, he observed her reaction with a mixture of amusement and understanding. In a swift movement, Cecilia sought refuge behind Daniel, her fear-driven instincts compelling her to seek safety in his proximity. Her voice, muffled by her terror, managed to squeak out, "These are monsters." Daniel's eyebrows raised, his amusement evident. "Indeed, they are. But don't worry, we can handle them." Cecilia's wide eyes peered cautiously from behind him, her gaze fixed on the snoring monsters. The stark contrast between her expectations and the reality of the creatures was evident in her horrified expression. "Of course, these are the monsters that you wanted to come, so what are you going to do now?" Daniel's tone was light-hearted, his words a reminder of their shared purpose. "We can't exit now that we have entered the dungeon. But their sizes are big. How on earth are we going to hunt them?" Cecilia's voice wavered, her initial confidence waning as she realized the magnitude of the challenge ahead. Daniel's reassuring smile offered a glimmer of encouragement. "Don't worry, Cecilia. We'll work together, use our skills, and use the strategy that we have made. Remember, we're a team." Cecilia's gaze shifted from the monsters to Daniel, her eyes reflecting a mixture of uncertainty and determination. Somehow, she could trust him and she decided to place her trust in him. "Stick with the plan," Daniel's voice was steady, a reassuring anchor as he guided Cecilia through the situation. His words carried a calm confidence, reminding her of the preparations they had made earlier, grounding her in the present moment. Cecilia's racing heart gradually steadied as she listened, her initial panic giving way to a growing sense of clarity. "Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I let myself loose for a moment," she admitted with an awkward laugh, a hint of embarrassment coloring her tone. "Just like the plan, I'll be your support and you'll be my attacker," Cecilia explained, her voice resolute as she embraced the role they had assigned themselves. Her gaze was fixed on the challenge ahead, a determination gleaming in her eyes. With a shared nod, they prepared to face the formidable opponents that awaited them, the wolf-like monsters known as Jatu. Their numbers were formidable, a pack of around 25 creatures, each with a level of 10. For Cecilia, whose level exceeded 10, the battle held a manageable aspect. Her acquired skills and experience gave her an advantage, positioning her well to face the challenge head-on. Daniel, on the other hand, assessed the situation with a seasoned eye. Though the monsters were not particularly challenging for him, he recognized the opportunity that lay before him. It was a chance to step back, to allow Cecilia to take the lead and showcase her abilities. His decision was not driven by a desire to hide his powers, but rather to nurture the bond they were forging, to leave a lasting impression on her. As they readied themselves, the tension in the air was palpable, the anticipation mounting as the Jatu monsters leapt toward them. Yet, their advance was met with an unexpected barrier, a solid shield that thwarted their attempt to overwhelm Daniel and Cecilia. The impact of the monsters against the barrier resonated, a testament to their collective strength. Cecilia's eyes widened in surprise, a mix of relief and determination flooding her expression. "Our preparations are paying off," she exclaimed, her voice holding a touch of wonder. Daniel's lips curled into a confident smile. "Indeed. This is just the beginning. Let's work together and show them what we're capable of." As the battle ensued, their relationship deepened, each movement and action binding them further in a shared pursuit. Chapter 39. Friend request: you are listening at novelfull.audio. A barrier kind of skill. Daniel said with a raised eyebrow, and he knew that she had that skill. At the same time, he observed the Jatu monsters suspended mid-air, their fangs thwarted by the impenetrable yellowish shield. Cecilia's abilities had proven their worth, her protective skill serving as a pivotal advantage in their battle. The monsters' attempts to tear through them were rendered futile against the translucent barrier that enveloped them. However, amidst the impressive display of her power, the barrier's strength began to wane, and Cecilia's frustration was palpable. "My shield can't hold on any longer," she exclaimed, her irritation tinged with urgency. Daniel's response was swift, his determination evident as he sprang into action. "On it," he called out, his focus zeroing in on the task at hand. With calculated precision, he moved among the suspended monsters, his movements fluid and efficient as he dispatched them one by one. But as Daniel engaged the Jata monsters, Cecilia's attention was captivated by an unexpected phenomenon. Each punch he delivered seemed to ripple through the air, distorting the very fabric of reality around them. The monsters quivered under his strikes, their forms wavering as if caught in a surreal dance. Cecilia's eyes widened in awe as she watched, her amazement overpowering her fear. The scene before her was nothing short of extraordinary, a display of power that defied her understanding of the world. She clung to clothes, a mixture of astonishment and exhilaration coursing through her veins. As Daniel's final punch landed, there was a dazzling burst of light, and the Jata monsters exploded into a shower of shimmering particles. The air crackled with residual energy, leaving behind an otherworldly ambience. Breathing heavily, Cecilia turned her gaze towards Daniel, her expression a mix of wonder and admiration. What was that?" Her voice trembled with newfound excitement, her curiosity overriding her initial fear. Daniel's grin was infectious, a blend of exhilaration and satisfaction. "I guess you could say I have a few surprises up my sleeve. It seems like my powers decided to make an entrance." Cecilia's laughter was tinged with awe as she surveyed the aftermath of the battle. "That was incredible, Daniel. I've never seen anything like it." Just when Cecilia had let her down, one of the soon-to-be dead monsters let out a final attack compressing from its final moment to her. As her attention was on Daniel, she didn't realize that there was an incoming attack. Yet, just as the deathly blast of chaos neared her, an almost imperceptible realization dawned upon her. A soft gasp escaped her lips, a mere syllable of surprise, before the impact crashed upon her. Boom! The force of the attack struck true, the ferocious energy clashing against Cecilia's in a cacophony of power. The collision created a veil of smoke that concealed the outcome, shrouding the aftermath in uncertainty. When the haze began to dissipate, what emerged was a scene that defied comprehension. Cecilia's voice trembled, confusion and disbelief evident as she whispered, "H.H. W. What happened?" Upon recognizing the impossibility of evading the blast, Cecilia instinctively closed her eyes, bracing herself for the impact. Yet, as her eyelids fluttered open, the reality that greeted her left her utterly stunned. "Are you all right?" A voice, laced with concern, reached her ears, breaking through the haze of bewilderment. Daniel." Cecilia's gaze shifted, her eyes widening in both surprise and relief as they landed on the familiar face above her. The situation was a whirlwind of emotions, and yet, amidst the chaos, Cecilia found herself held in an unexpected manner. She was cradled in Daniel's arms, a princess carried, her heart quickening at the proximity of their bodies. I'm all right, but can you put me down?" Cecilia's voice wavered, her cheeks tinged with a soft blush as she realized the position they were in. Her words held a mix of confusion and embarrassment, her mind struggling to reconcile the situation. Daniel complied, gently lowering her to the ground. Her feet touched the floor, but the lingering warmth of his touch remained, a testament to the moment they had shared. As their eyes met, a connection seemed to spark between them, an unspoken understanding that transcended words. Cecilia's heart raced, her pulse quickening in response to the fluttering emotions that surged within her. For some inexplicable reason, Cecilia found herself surprisingly unflustered by the close contact. Instead, she felt a curious sense of security, a comfort that resonated from the embrace. The beat of Daniel's heart, steady beneath her ear, added to the calming sensation that enveloped her. As they stood there, the battle's aftermath echoing around them, Cecilia's thoughts swirled. Her perception of the moment was uniquely serene, and the scent of Daniel's body that lingered in the air was strangely comforting, a tantalizing detail that intrigued her senses. Their eyes locked, and in that shared gaze, an unspoken connection deepened. Time seemed to stand still as Cecilia's heart raced, a symphony of emotions playing within her. At that moment, amidst the chaos and the remnants of battle, a spark of something intimate and unspoken flared to life between them. The silence that enveloped them seemed to hold a weight of its own, a profound moment of shared understanding that spoke volumes without the need for words. Yet, the tranquility was abruptly shattered by the chime of a notification that materialized before them. You have completed the Dungeon of Phoenix Stage 1, would you like to move on or claim the rewards? Daniel's gaze shifted from Cecilia to the notification, his contemplation interrupted by the digital prompt. I guess that concludes the end of the journey, he questioned, directing his words to Cecilia, who seemed engrossed in her own thoughts. Her response was a silence that lingered, her focus seemingly elsewhere. A few moments later, however, she made her decision, her fingers deftly selecting the option to claim the rewards. The confirmation screen flashed before them, and in the blink of an eye, they found themselves outside the dungeon once more. A surge of uncertainty swept over Daniel, his mind buzzing with questions about their future interactions. Did I make a mistake, he wondered, fearing that his previous actions had caused her to retreat into silence. Cecilia's sudden movement caught him off guard as she turned to face him, her gaze determined despite her hesitation. Thanks for saving me. I don't think I would have escaped unscathed from the blast, she admitted, her voice tinged with a mix of timidity and genuine gratitude. Daniel's heart warmed at her words, a genuine smile tugging at the corners of his lips. You're welcome, he replied softly, his gaze unwavering as he met her eyes. The air between them seemed to shift, a subtle current of emotions threading through their connection. And this is where we part, he suggested, his tone carrying a hint of reluctance. Wait no. Let me send you a friend request, Cecilia blurted out, her words rushing forth as if propelled by an urgent impulse. The unexpected request caught Daniel by surprise, but he quickly recovered and nodded in agreement. It was a simple gesture, yet its significance wasn't lost on him. As they clasped each other's hands, the touch sent a shiver down Cecilia's spine, an electrifying connection that seemed to amplify the intensity of the moment. For Daniel, this was a familiar gesture, a step towards building a relationship he cherished. As their hands intertwined, he couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu, as if fate had guided them to this very crossroads. Cecilia, on the other hand, was navigating uncharted territory. Her heart raced, the simple act of holding his hand stirring an inexplicable fluttering within her chest. It was a sensation she had never experienced before, a mixture of attraction, curiosity, and an unspoken longing. In the span of a few seconds, their identities became intertwined in the digital realm. Their friendship, initiated by a humble friend request, held the promise of a connection that transcended the boundaries of the game. As their hands reluctantly separated, a lingering warmth remained, a testament to the fleeting yet significant moment they had shared. The aura of intimacy that surrounded them was palpable, leaving an indelible mark on their consciousness. Cecilia's cheeks were tinged with a delicate blush, her gaze averted as a mixture of embarrassment and anticipation washed over her. I guess I'll see you around then, she murmured, her voice softer than a whisper. Daniel's heart swelled with a mixture of emotions as he offered her a reassuring smile. Definitely. Until then, he replied, his words carrying a promise that seemed to echo far beyond the boundaries of the game world. Chapter 40. Lutz, you are listening at novelfull.audio. With each step she took, Cecilia's thoughts continued to revolve around the encounter with Daniel, as if she had stumbled upon a long-lost treasure. Her heart fluttered in a way that felt oddly familiar yet entirely new, akin to the nervous excitement of meeting a crush for the first time. As she navigated through the digital landscape, her mind seemed to conjure his image at every turn, the warmth of his smile, the reassuring strength in his presence, the enigmatic aura that surrounded him. She couldn't deny the pull he had on her, an inexplicable attraction that left her both exhilarated and bewildered. The memory of their interaction replayed in her mind like a cherished scene from a storybook, each detail etched into her memory. His voice, his actions, and his very essence had left an impression that refused to fade. It was as though she had met someone who resonated with her on a level she hadn't experienced before. Cecilia's heart raced at the thought of seeing him again, a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty washing over her. She questioned her own emotions, attempting to decipher the source of this newfound fascination. It was a dance of emotions that she had never encountered, leaving her feeling both elated and perplexed. Despite her best efforts to remain composed, her thoughts continued to drift back to Daniel. She found herself daydreaming about their next encounter, imagining the conversations they might share, the adventures they could embark on together. It was a delicate balance between reality and fantasy, a sweet sensation that tingled at the edges of her consciousness. As she delved deeper into the game's quests and challenges, Cecilia couldn't help but wonder if their paths would cross once more. The prospect of reuniting with him sent a rush of excitement through her veins, a feeling akin to the flutter of butterflies in her stomach. And so, as she continued her journey, Cecilia's heart remained tethered to the memory of that chance meeting, a reminder of the enigmatic stranger who had ignited a spark within her. It was a sensation that mirrored the exhilaration of encountering a crush, a connection that held the promise of something more, yet remained shrouded in mystery. Daniel's mind was a flurry of conflicting emotions as he reluctantly walked away from Cecilia, leaving behind the intrigue and connection that had blossomed between them. While his heart yearned to spend more time with her, he was acutely aware of the goals he had set for himself. Much like his approach to the world, he meticulously charted safe paths before indulging in his desires. Daniel understood the importance of prioritizing his objectives. He couldn't afford to let distractions divert him from his path, not when there were tasks to be accomplished and challenges to overcome. In some ways, his situation mirrored his quest within the world, striving to navigate through a complex web of possibilities and uncertainties. And just as he sought to maximize every opportunity within the game, he also sought to maximize his potential in the real world, leaving no room for regrets. Despite the bittersweet separation, Daniel held on to the belief that this wouldn't be the end of their journey. He knew that their paths were destined to intersect again, the modern Fantasia acting as a bridge that would eventually lead them back together. As he continued on his quest, he couldn't help but think about the limited time he had left with the EXP buff, a precious resource that held the potential to propel him closer to his goals. The ticking clock served as a reminder of the opportunities that awaited him, urging him to press forward and seize every advantage he could. Daniel's determination remained steadfast, a driving force that pushed him forward even as his thoughts occasionally wandered back to Cecilia. He understood the need to balance his desires with his ambitions, to ensure that he was making the most of his time in this new reality. With a determined resolve, Daniel shifted his focus back to his goals, acknowledging the need to maximize his efforts before the EXP buff's time ran out. The window of opportunity was limited, and he was determined to make the most of it. However, before diving into the perfect spot for leveling, he decided to take a moment to assess the prisms he had earned. His lips curled into a smirk as he located a nearby restaurant in the bustling city, using it as a quiet sanctuary to review his current status. Name: Daniel Bell. Age: 18. Level: 176 EXP 115, 252/177,000 Race: Demonia First Class. Dark Sovereign, Normal, Second Class. None HP, 42,750 MP, 42,750 STR 17,100 Def 8550 int 8550 Luke. 8550. His gaze swept over the stats, a sense of satisfaction washing over him. He marveled at his rapid progression, reaching level 176 within just 2 days was an impressive feat. The challenge now lay in how much further he could push himself before the buff's expiration. I've made significant progress, but I wonder how much more I can achieve before the week is up, he mused to himself, excitement building at the prospect of what lay ahead. Turning his attention to the prisms he had earned, he allowed himself a small smile as he accessed the rewards he had obtained. You have obtained a skill, Shadow Clone Jutsu, C. You have obtained a weapon, God Arc, B. You have obtained an item, Adaptable Cloth, C. You have obtained a skill, Fireball, E. You have obtained a skill, Poisonous Arrow, D. You have obtained a weapon, a Durable Spear, D. You have obtained an armor, Silver Chest Plate, D. You have obtained armor, Lightweight Boots, D. You have obtained an armor, Helmet of Ogre, C. You have obtained a weapon, Cursed Bow, C. Daniel's eyebrows lifted in intrigue as he reviewed the array of acquisitions. The variety was impressive, and he couldn't help but appreciate the versatility these rewards offered. Each item had its potential use, enhancing his combat capabilities and adding depth to his arsenal. The Shadow Clone Jutsu and the God Arc are particularly intriguing. I'll need to explore their potential, he murmured, his mind already working out potential strategies. His attention then turned to the Adaptable Cloth, a technology that held immense promise. The concept of seamlessly overlaying armor and clothing was a practical solution, especially considering the limitations of expensive battle suits. It was a clever workaround that could offer a significant advantage in the field. As he evaluated his spoils, Daniel's thoughts drifted to the loot he had acquired from the dungeon of Paimon. The riches he had amassed were significant, and he realized that they could be put to good use in aiding the organization his mother was a part of. Perhaps it's time I put these treasures to use, strengthen our cause, he mused, contemplating the potential impact of his contributions. With determination burning in his eyes, Daniel set to work reorganizing his inventory and planning how best to allocate the loot for the benefit of his loved ones. He understood the importance of collaboration and realized that he couldn't shoulder the burden alone, especially in the face of the endless onslaught of apocalypse monsters. He envisioned a fortified base, a bastion against the encroaching threat, and he knew that every resource he could provide would contribute to its realization. Time to make a difference, he muttered to himself, his resolve unwavering while wanting to conquer the dungeon of Phoenix where she shall obtain another Jin.